So I gave Kendrick Lamar's new album a 7 on my first listen. Admittedly, I didn't love it on a first listen. I was just kind of confused by the direction he went in. But I've listened to it a couple times since then. I like it a lot more now. And in this video, I'm just going to be giving some additional thoughts, kind of going more in depth into this album. And I'm also going to be giving a rating for every track as well. I'm going to be kind of skimming through the album again and kind of just talk about it a little bit more, because my opinion has changed quite a bit, and it might even change a little bit more today. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty laid back video, probably not that many edits. Yeah, we're going to hop right into it. The first track, I did love the first track on a first listen, and I still love it as well. I think the intro is really engaging with the kind of theatrical vocals. I never really had a problem with the theatrical vocals. I don't find it really cringy at all. I actually find it kind of engaging, and it's pretty unique as well. I mean, you had moments like that kind of on To Pimp a Butterfly. It also kind of reminds me of Sometimes I Might Be Introvert, with the kind of transitions between tracks and the little skits and the, like I said, kind of theatrical nature to it. So yeah, I like this first track. I think it's engaging. I think the way he starts it off saying 1,855 days is really nice. I think it's just a really solid opening track. It really pulls you in. It feels like an opening track. I love the little piano chords that go on. It really hooks you in. His flow at the beginning is amazing as well. What is a woman that really hurt? A demon, you better on killing her. That flow is amazing. The piano chords are sick. There's a lot of piano in this album, but I really do like most of the piano stuff that's going on. And lyrically, this track is great as well, kind of just telling us where he is. And it really does, I mean, talking about grief, of course, he grieves different, that kind of stuff. And yeah, obviously, I don't know, like, I haven't analyzed every single lyric in this, but I think it does offer some pretty entertaining bars. I think structurally, it's a pretty well-structured track. And the thing that really impresses me about this track is the instrumental. You have those crazy drums, like the breakbeat drums that come in at one point. The piano, like I said, is sick. You got some jazzy influence in there. Feels a little bit like TPAB, but it kind of has its own flavor to it as well. And there's one moment where some like wailing strings come in. This part, absolutely insane. The lush sound. Overall, the production on this track is amazing. I think it's one of the more musically interesting tracks, and it's still one of my favorites. In terms of a score, I feel like it does get a little bit stale when you're listening to the track. Like, it's not completely entertaining throughout the entire way. I'm feeling like a 9.5 on this track, because other than that fact, it's pretty freaking amazing. His flow is amazing, one of the better flows on this album as well. So yeah, United in Grief is fantastic. N95 is... I tried to give this track a chance. It's still not one of my favorites. I think the writing is not particularly interesting. Take off the this, take off the that. The flow I'm not a huge fan of. It kind of just seems like an old head anthem. You know, take off the money phone, take off the car loan. Just kind of being super negative towards all these things that rappers and people nowadays do. I get the point of the track. Take this off, what's really inside, and he's saying nothing. The chorus is alright, but really what comes down to me not liking this track that much is the beat. The beat is super dated on this track. The horns or the synths or the strings or whatever those are just do not sound good, in my opinion, at all. It sounds like something that would come out in like 2010. I don't know why Kendrick chose this beat. I just don't really see anything appealing about it at all. It's really not my style at all. It has grown on me a little bit compared to when I first heard it. It's still not great. The beat, again, still pretty cheesy, feels still pretty dated. I'm feeling a 7 on this track. I mean, 7 being the worst track is still pretty good. It's not the worst beat I've ever heard. Like I said, I just feel like for Kendrick, he doesn't really fit over this beat that well, and I feel like he can pick some better beats. Next track, we have Worldwide Steppers. This is also one of my favorites. It has shrunk on me a little bit. I really liked it on a first listen, but as I've listened to it more, it has become a little bit stale, and I think the track just gets a little bit stale, like in terms of the instrumental. I thought the instrumental at first was super innovative, which it is, but as I listen to it more and more, I just wish the instrumental changed up more to keep it more entertaining.
Text messaging bitches got my thumbs hurt.
Lyrically, it's pretty heavy, but again, it just comes down to the instrumental. I mean, it's cool. My only complaint is that it doesn't switch up that much. There's some like cool piano stuff going on and stuff. The writing is definitely better on this track, I think, than N95. Talking about fucking a white bitch, and then how just some great lines in here. It's this one's a lot better in terms of the writing, and I do like the chorus on this one a lot better too. I'm a killer, he's a killer, she's a killer bitch. It's a better flow as well. It's more interesting lyrically. It's more interesting sonically. My one complaint, like I said, is that it doesn't switch up enough, but it is still pretty solid. I would still listen to it every now and again. So I'm gonna give it. I'm feeling like an 8.3. It's definitely better than N95. Not as good as United in Grief, but still pretty solid. And one thing I also, as I've revisited this album more, that I don't think I really noticed in my first listen is the kind of steps. And I never kind of put two and two together. I always thought those were like drums. I mean, they kind of do work as drums. They kind of sound like them, but I think they're meant to be steps, as in the big steppers. And it does really do a cool job of tying each track together. It kind of works as like a transitional sound, I guess, and obviously it ties into the title of the album, The Big Steppers. So I think it's pretty cool. Again, I didn't really notice that on a first listen, but kind of just a cool thing I picked up on there. I mean, it's pretty obvious, but Die Hard is... Which one is this again? Let me see. Is this the Drake track? This was one of my favorites off of a first listen. It has shrunk on me a little bit because I think the instrumental is just a little bit... It's not as engaging as the first time I heard it. It is an interesting direction for Kendrick to go in. Like I said, this kind of Drake chill... Almost sounds like Passion Fruit by Drake. I think he does it pretty well. It goes over pretty well. There's some vocal inflections from Kendrick that I'm not the biggest fan of. And it's actually the intro. Up the pain away. Not the biggest fan of that flow. There's some other ones in here. I mean, the lyrics are all right. Talking about your significant other. Do you love me? Do you trust me? Can I open up to you? Is it safe? Definitely a track covering themes of love, mistakes, regrets. And those are all really prominent themes throughout the album as too. Yeah, like I said, it shrunk on me, and it just comes down to some of the Kendrick vocal inflections. The beat got a little bit stale as I listened to it more, but it's still a pretty solid vibe. It's pretty catchy. It's pretty solid. I feel like it could be on the radio. I'm feeling like an 8.1, I think. I don't think I like it as much as Worldwide Steppers, definitely. But like I said, it's a good vibe. If Kendrick is going to make these mainstream tracks, at least he's doing them pretty well. Like, they're not necessarily my style. They're not like the most interesting stuff musically, but it sounds good. It's catchy, and that's all you can really ask for those types of tracks. Father Time is next. Father Time is one of the best tracks, and I still think it is one of the best tracks. Honestly, I think I like it more as I listen to it more. The backwards sample at the beginning there sounds fantastic. Overall, the production on this track is insane. And I got daddy issues, that's on me. See, daddy issues, wanna bust my head, tell me fuck a the production on the drums is so good. They sound so crispy. The sample's amazing. Super catchy. The beat is super catchy, but then you got Kendrick spitting about, of course, daddy issues over top of it. And lyrically, this is probably one of my favorite tracks. He really goes in here talking about how he was raised and how he kind of wants to break that cycle and not raise his kids the same way. There's, again, some really, really great lyrics in here. Sampha absolutely kills it on the hook. I gotta listen to this hook. Hold on. Oh! Absolutely heavenly vocals. Fits over that beat so well. Super catchy. Love that hook. Probably the highlight of the song for me. But like I said, Kendrick kills it on the lyrics, talking about him playing as a kid. He has to get up, can't be kind of that idea of suck it up. Bill's got no silver spoon. Or wait, this is actually a really good line right here. Mama died, asked him why he's going back to work so soon. His first reply was, son, that's life. The Bill's got no silver spoon. So yeah, I think it's a really introspective track, kind of talking about his past, kind of talking about his father. The Kanye and Drake line is great. I kind of didn't get the full point of this line when I first listened to it. I kind of just agreed with Kendrick that it was confusing when Kanye and Drake got back together. But then he says, guess I'm not as mature as I think, got some healing to do. So that kind of ties back into the idea of the track again, kind of talking about toxic masculinity, and that's kind of a big theme throughout this album as well, which is really interesting. Learn about being a man disguised as being a gangster. And this is a great line right here. I clicked on this and it said it was kind of a reference to Everything I Am by Kanye West, where he says, everything I'm not made me everything I am, which definitely, I feel like that is intentional. I mean, it's not exactly the same, but the phrasing is kind of the same. I love my father for telling me to take off the gloves, because everything he didn't want was everything I was. Great line there. Great track, talking about daddy issues. And again, talking about breaking that cycle. And I think he kind of talks about that later in this album too, breaking the cycle of trauma within his family. So that's another big theme in this album. And I think lyrically, musically, it's one of the best tracks on this album. The hook gets me every single time, and it's grown on me even more. So Father Time, I might have to give it a 10. I mean, as I'm thinking about it, there's really nothing that I don't like about it. Like, it's just completely entertaining all the way through. I don't think it really lacks in any area. Writing is good. Production is good. There's a killer hook. It's engaging the entire way through. It fits in with the rest of the album. Like, it's fantastic. All right, Rich Interlude is next. This is the one with Kodak, of course. I actually like this interlude. I think the way the piano transitions into that crazy, like, arpeggiating stuff with those chords and stuff is really interesting. How it starts off kind of choppy, speeds up, and it's a really cool backdrop to what Kodak is saying here. I mean, I'm guessing Kodak wrote this, but it's pretty interesting, talking about why he's on this album with Kendrick, talking about giving the game back to the OGs, or saying can't be better than the OGs. Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool interlude. I don't think it's not anything mind-blowing, but I think it kind of works. My only complaint is that it's a little bit long. I never even noticed this line right here too, Daddy Deadbeat. That kind of ties back to the previous track as well. So yeah, I think it's interesting. Kodak has an interesting voice, so it kind of works for him to do a voiceover and kind of just talk about stuff. Like I said, my only complaint is that it's a little bit long. I don't think it needs to be a minute 43. I think you could get the point across a little bit. I mean, you could get it across just as well with it being a little bit shorter, and it wouldn't waste as much time, because it does get a little bit boring. I'm actually going to give it an 8.5. 8.5. The only problem is that it's a little bit long, but other than that, it's pretty solid. All right, we're moving on to Rich Spirit, which is not one of my favorites. I don't think I hated it when I first heard it, but as I listened to it more, it's really not that great. It feels like a mustard kind of beat. It feels like something Vince Staples should be on. I mean, that kind of actually would have been pretty cool if Kenny got Vince Staples on this. Again, musically, it's just not that intriguing to me. The beat feels pretty generic. And, I mean, I guess I respect Kendrick for going in this direction, but I don't think he fully executes this sound the best. Lyrically, it's pretty solid, though. There's just the chorus I liked when I first heard it, but as I hear it more, it's just not that great. Obviously, with the bitch, I'm attractive, turn you to a song. I do like that line, but overall, the chorus is not anything that amazing. But yeah, the writing is fine on this track. It just it comes down to the beat, really. I'm not a big fan of the beat at all. Rich Spirit, I'm gonna give Rich Spirit 6.5. 6.5 for Rich Spirit. It's just comes down to that beat, man. If Kendrick was doing that over a different beat, it would have been okay, but just not a big fan of the production on that one. All right, we have We Cry Together coming up next, which has been talked about a lot, and it makes sense because this track is absolutely insane. Like, I don't think I've ever heard a track like this before. I mean, you can compare it to You off of TPAB, which I've seen people do because of the emotion in Taylor Page's voice at some points. You can compare it to For Free 2 off of TPAB with the argument kind of style, but this kind of takes the argument to the next level because it's an argument the entire song. And it's over, an Alchemist beat? And it just sounds amazing. The piano, the beat in general is fantastic. And it's just engaging the entire way through. It's super explicit. I don't even know how many, F words are in this, but it's crazy. It's entertaining. The chorus is literally, fuck you, bitch, not fuck you. It's so good. It's so good. Kendrick somehow makes this argument entertaining for nearly 6 minutes. It's just crazy how he does it. Obviously, it ends with them getting it on. It's really a depiction of not a healthy relationship at all, in the slightest. But it's interesting. It's an interesting track. It's entertaining. It's hilarious. But when you really think about it, it's depressing as well. The fact that relationships are actually like this sometimes. The Taylor Page starts talking about Harvey Weinstein, R. Kelly, then Kendrick takes the other side to it. Even though it is an argument, it's not just a bunch of swear words being thrown back at each other. They actually do start talking about some stuff, which keeps it entertaining as well. I thought, after I heard this for the first time, I thought it was gonna shrink on me a little bit, but every time I listen to it, it's just as engaging, just as entertaining. And I think the way they do it too, it feels like a conversation, but it's also rapped at the same time, which is super interesting. They actually have a flow to it, and it fits over the beat, which is really cool. I mean, you could have just had a conversation where it doesn't really fit that well, or an argument, but each line feels like it's being rapped, but also screamed at the same time. Taylor Page is she an actor or actress? I think she is. Because she absolutely, the emotion that she reaches, how raspy her voice gets, she starts losing it. She starts almost crying at one point. Kendrick's great in it too, but Taylor Page is really the standout on this track. It's super entertaining. I need to hear a little bit again. Beat is fantastic. The way they end it too, where they say stop tap dancing around the conversation. And then, maybe I just had a realization. Maybe the steps are tap dancing, because that's what it does kind of sound like. Wow, that's cool. We're still picking up on things, you know? So that fits right there. That's cool as well. Great track. I'm going to give it a 10 because it is completely entertaining. It is inventive. I have never heard anything like it. Wow, 2 10s already in this first half. It hasn't shrunk on me. It's one of those tracks where I thought, again, it would, but it has stayed quality. It has stayed entertaining, and it's done really well. That's a track where I feel like it has to be executed pretty much perfectly for it to be really good, because it could come across. I mean, if the acting wasn't good, obviously it would be terrible. It could come across as forced. It could go wrong really easily, I feel like, but they execute it really well. So it's a 10. It's one of the best on this album. And who would have thought that Kendrick would have a track where 2 people argue for 6 minutes? Crazy. Inventive, creative, original, and it's entertaining. All right, let's keep going on to the next track, which is Purple Hearts. I didn't love this track off of first listen. I still don't really love it. I mean, it's all right. I think the Ghostface Killah feature at the end is probably the highlight for me. The beat is okay. I think I like the beat more than Rich Spirit, definitely. I do have a complaint about the intro. I think the intro is a little bit long. It's nearly 30 seconds of the instrumental.
Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby.
I do like Kendrick's vocals on it. I like that, yeah, baby. The beat is, like I said, definitely better than Rich Spirit. I do have one complaint with the beat, though, and that is the kind of crash cymbal in the beat. I don't know if you guys... It just feels like it's being hit too many times, and it gets a little bit grating and a little bit annoying. That's kind of just a nitpick for the drums, though. Lyrically, it's pretty interesting as well. Summer Walker has a great voice, and what was the line that she had that everyone's talking about? It ain't love if you ain't eating my ass, which is just hilarious. Great line. I like this line, too, anti-everyone before the mask. Kind of being an introvert. you know? Black or Ghostface here kind of talks about God and how he needs to kind of intervene in things. And yeah, if God be the source, then I am the plug talking. Great lines. As I'm kind of talking about it, I feel like it's getting better and better as I'm talking through it. Kendrick doesn't have like too many really strange vocal inflections on this one. And I like the hook. I like Summer Walker on it. Like I said, like Ghostface. Only complaints are the intro being a little bit too long and probably that kind of that cymbal in there. It's a little bit annoying as the track goes on. I also do think it's a little bit long too. 5.5 minutes. Because the beat doesn't switch up that much, so it does get a little bit boring, a little bit stale. But those are really my only complaints with this track. I think it's still a pretty solid track. It's a feel good. I feel like it's gonna be a summer jam, you know. I'm gonna go 8.4. 8.4 feels right. And of course, all these ratings are just purely based off of my enjoyment, how much I enjoy a song out of 10. I think I might actually like Disc 1 more than Disc 2. Disc 2 does have some really good tracks like Auntie, Diaries, Mother I Sober, but we'll talk through it. Count Me Out is the first off of Disc 2. I did kind of like Count Me Out on a first listen, but it has grown on me quite a bit, and this is when it really becomes clear that each of these tracks are a therapy session, obviously with the Session 10 breakthrough. And yeah, I like this track a lot lyrically too, kind of Kendrick talking about all these people that are doubting him. Also talking about the current state of the world a lot too, with some COVID bars. There is some weak bars in here, like I'm not a big fan of that Amityville bar, but I think it's interesting. I think the beat switches up quite a bit, keeps it interesting, and yeah, I like the overall concept of the track. I think it sounds pretty good. I think those vocals too, those choir vocals fit really well over this beat. As I'm listening to it now, it's growing on me even more as well. I think Kendrick's flow is actually pretty interesting on this track. It feels pretty unique to anything he's done before. I mean, this whole album does, but yeah, this is a really good track. I think it's got some catchy melodies in it. The beat is good. The switch ups keep it interesting. There is some vocals that I'm not like the biggest fan of, like that part right there. This second verse here, the delivery just feels, I don't know, there's something about it that feels kind of sleepy and kind of awkward. But yeah, I don't really have much complaints about this track, really. I'm feeling like an 8.2. 8.2. It's pretty solid. Like I said, it's nothing mind-blowing, so it's not gonna get a 10 or anything, or even a 9, but I think it's just a good vibe, and I think it's Kendrick making another catchy song that is entertaining and pretty quality. So yeah, 8.2 is a really good score. Even I gave this album a 7 when I first listened to it, which is again a really good score. But yeah, there's people in the comments talking about a 7. What? All right, let's keep going. Crown is the next track. Crown is one that I really liked on a first listen. It has shrunk on me a little bit, and it really comes down to the music. I think the music doesn't switch up enough. It gets kind of boring. It's another one of these piano beats. The chord progression is nice. I just think it doesn't grow enough instrumentally to keep it super engaging throughout. It does get a little bit boring. It is one of my favorite tracks lyrically, kind of addressing the crown, I guess, on the cover, and how he can't please everybody. It's definitely one of the more sad tracks on the album. And yeah, him feeling like this is something he struggled with in his career before, feeling like maybe he does need to please everybody, feeling like he has to kind of follow up to Pimp a Butterfly and fill those expectations, which is just not fair, because To Pimp a Butterfly is literally one of the greatest albums of all time. So yeah, and you have this kind of Jesus savior imagery, which is a thing that comes up again later in the album. Can't please everybody, love gonna get you killed. I thought these new things would help, they wouldn't. And then you end it with this outro here. Again, it's great lyrically, it's pretty depressing, but my only really complaint is the music on it. I get that it's supposed to be minimal, so you kind of focus on the lyrics, but I think it could have kind of switched up a little bit more. Maybe like a 7.9. Feeling a 7.9. pretty solid. Silent Hill, featuring Kodak Black. I don't think I liked this one on a first listen either. I liked Kendrick's portion of it. I didn't like Kodak's portion of it. Kodak's verse has grown on me a little bit as I kind of think about it more. This is actually pretty solid for Kodak. Like, the flow is all right, the lyrics are all right, and the beat on this track is absolutely insane as well.
Push these niggas off me like, pushing the snakes, I'm pushing the fakes, I'm pushing them all on me like,
One of my favorite choruses on the album too, pushing these off me like, It's just, I don't know, there's something about it. It feels good. It feels like something Playboi Carti would do, but it also kind of just feels like Kendrick too. It feels true to himself. It's fun. It's a fun track in general. The beat is absolutely insane. One of the best kind of more new school beats on this album. I feel like this is Kendrick doing that sound really well. And it's got that Baby Keem influence as well, but I think it's pretty entertaining. There's not too many awkward vocal inflections, which is something I've struggled with Baby Keem. And like I said, Kodak, his verse is not terrible. Like, he's not as good as Kendrick, but like I said, it's better than most of the Kodak stuff. He kind of holds his own on this track. It's not terrible. And like I said, this chorus really puts it over the top for me, as well as the beat. Kendrick or Kodak does bring it down a little bit, but he's still pretty solid. It was I think it was actually one of my least favorite off of first listen, but it's grown on me a lot. I'd probably give it an 8. Probably give it an 8. Savior Interlude is next. This is the one with Baby Keem, right, and the strings. I think I like this interlude actually less, because it does feel a little bit too long for an interlude, like 2.5 minutes. The instrumental actually has grown on me quite a bit on this track. I thought the strings felt a little bit cheap at first, but I think it works. I think it works musically. Baby Keem is actually pretty good on this. He sounds hungry. I really struggled with this part right here, bend down on my luck when I fall. Like, the way he delivers that, I'm still not a huge fan of it. But other than that, the lyrics are pretty solid. There's one here where he talks about, my uncle told me the shit in the movies could only be magic. This year I did 43 shows and took it all home to buy him a casket. This line is so dark, but it's like a flex at the same time. It's a super good line. Overall, this track is pretty solid as an interlude. I think, again, it is a little bit long, but the music has grown on me quite a bit, and Baby Keem does pretty solid. I think in terms of the vocals, I think this interlude and the lyrics, I think this interlude is a little bit more entertaining than Kodak's, but in terms of the music, I think I like the music on the Rich interlude a little bit better. Probably a 7.5 if I'm being honest. I'm trying to remember which track this is. I think I liked it. Oh yeah. This is a good track. This is a really good one. This reversed beat production on this track is great. That bass. Are you happy for me? Really? Are you happy for me? And I wasn't super huge on this chorus when I first heard it, but it's grown on me a lot. I think the kind of attitude of the chorus is really interesting. I like Keem's delivery on it. Are you happy for me? It's really entertaining. And again, it's got this kind of attitude that I like. I like the whole concept of, are you happy for me? Because I think a lot of people nowadays, for people that are in the spotlight, they get so much hate nowadays. I sound like a boomer nowadays with freaking social media and stuff. But, like, it's true. I feel like a lot of those people probably do question if people are truly happy for them. So yeah, I like this. I like the lyrics overall. I like this COVID stuff with Kyrie. It's a really good track. The beat is absolutely knocking. Kendrick talking about him not being your savior, of course. Kind of talked about that earlier, but goes into more detail here. And I like that stance by Kendrick. I like him kind of coming to the conclusion that he doesn't need to be everyone's savior. And I feel like it's going to take a lot of stress off of him, hopefully. And I think it's a really mature track to kind of come to that realization. So yeah, this is a really good track. Really solid. There's a lot of tracks on this that I was not huge on at first, and I think it really just came down to my expectations. Like, I was really expecting stuff that sounded like The Heart Part 5, and then when I heard stuff like this kind of new school, more trap influenced, newer kind of sound, I kind of immediately wrote it off in my mind. But once I actually like kind of listen to it, like compared to a lot of the stuff that's coming out, like trap stuff and this kind of style, this is like really good. Like really good. The production is really good. And even when Kendrick is doing these kind of strange, more new school flows, these melodic like flows and stuff, he's still saying a lot of stuff with depth as well, which is really good. Really good. I like this track a lot. Lyrically, it's good. Beat is good. Baby Keem's chorus is good. Sam Dew has some cool vocals in there. And I think it's good. I think it's a really good way to talk about Kendrick kind of relieving himself of some pressure. It feels like a really kind of freeing track. Auntie Diaries is next, which, I gotta give that a rating. Savior, I would give Savior like an 8.3. 8.3 feels right. Again, it's not mind-blowing, but I think it's pretty solid for what it's trying to do. So yeah. All right, Auntie Diaries. Like I said, this is a track that has been talked about a lot, especially on Twitter. I liked this track a lot. It was probably my favorite on the album when I first heard it, and it's still one of my favorites. I think it's emotional. I think it's musically, it's excellent. I think the way it builds and reaches this kind of climax is insane. It's Kendrick at his kind of storytelling best, I feel like, and I don't think it's transphobic at all. Obviously, I'm not gonna like invalidate people's feelings if they're genuinely offended by him using the F slur, of course. But for me, I don't see any kind of intent of harm by Kendrick. I think he's coming from a good place. I think it it's not absolutely necessary to push the story along, but I think it works. It helps present this story. Obviously, you have to look at it in context, saying that he used to say that, how obviously he doesn't say it anymore. But then again, he's saying it right here. For me, personally, I think it's fine because I don't think there's any ill will behind it. I don't think there's any intention. Like, there's no power really behind the word. Like, he's saying the word yes, but there's nothing to it. I'm still kind of struggling with my take on it because there have been people bringing up the fact that if a white rapper said that he used to say the N-word and then he said it in the song, like similar to how Kendrick did here with the F slur, that would not be okay. Like, people would get mad. And it's kind of interesting how there's kind of a double standard there. But then Kendrick even kind of addresses this at the end when he talks about how he brought that girl on stage and he said that, or she said the N-word. So he kind of addresses that contradiction. And I think that's what makes this song fine for me, is the fact that he does that. It's a complex situation. It's a complex song, and I think it's flawed on purpose because Kendrick is a normal human being, right? He's not some sort of god. He's gonna make mistakes, and I think that's what this track really touches on. But again, it's the idea that he's trying to do better, and again, it kind of just highlights that hypocritical contradiction, double standard, I guess you could say. If he says it and it offends you, obviously I'm not gay, I'm not trans, I'm not any of those. Like, I'm not personally affected by him saying it. But I can imagine if I was, I don't know. I think I would be offended, honestly. So it's a tough situation. I don't have all the answers, obviously. It's a complex situation that's really tough to deal with. Kendrick might learn from this. He might never do this in a song from now on. But personally, for me, I think it's part of the artistic vision here, and it helps get the point of the song across, in my opinion. And it's very clearly pro-trans. It's not homophobic or transphobic in any way at all. Just listen to that beat. Man, feels like something that could be on Good Kid, kind of. It's a good track. The instrumental picks up, the strings come in. He kind of picks up the emotion and the intensity in his voice as well, which really adds to it. I think it's good. I think it's a really good track, really good storytelling. Production's great. And I'm going to give it a 10. I think it deserves a 10. I think it's some of the best writing on this album, and it's really powerful and really emotional. Really, really good stuff. Mr. Morale is next. I wasn't a big fan of Mr. Morale on a first listen, and I'm still not like really the biggest fan. It's produced by Pharrell. The beat's all right. Let me just kind of refresh myself on this one. I mean, it's, as I'm skimming through it now, it is pretty solid, actually. It's going for more of an aggressive sound, but I think it kind of does reach it. Him with the oohs and the ahs in here, kind of hyping himself up, really, really makes the drop kind of worth it. Really builds the suspense, of course. I think lyrically, it's not it's not actually the most interesting. It's still pretty solid though. I mean, it's Kendrick Lamar. The lyrics are always going to be pretty solid, even if they're not like top notch, top of his game. But yeah, I think the flows in here are pretty interesting. The beat is all right. It's not one of my favorite beats, but I think it's still pretty solid. I think it does kind of reach what it's going for to an extent. It's not one of my favorites though, and I think it really just comes down to it not really being my style. But for what it is, I think it's pretty good. So I'm gonna give it I'm feeling like a 7.8. That feels right. Mother I Sober is next, which, oh my goodness, this song is absolutely amazing. This kind of feels like similar to Auntie Diaries to me in terms of the structure. It's super, super heartbreaking. Kendrick talking about his trauma, talking about him cheating on his wife here. I guess they're married. I think they're married. I think telling him to go to therapy. Is that in this track? Yeah, him talking about how his addictions aren't him being like they're not drugs, they're not alcohol, but it's lust, and it's being sleeping around with these other women and stuff. It's a really honest, introspective track, and I just applaud Kendrick for being this honest on a track. Like you don't have to talk about this stuff, but he's openly talking about this. It's some hard stuff to talk about. Him talking about his mom, she was violated. Like there's just a lot of heavy stuff in this track, man. Talking about generations of trauma within black families. This part here where he picks up his voice, picks up the intensity, again the beat picks up again. It's so emotional. And this outro here, fantastic. I gotta play it. This is transformation. Oh, it's so good. It has this kind of freeing feeling as well with him saying, I set free our children, set free the hearts filled with hatred. It feels like he's trying to be the bigger person here and forgive all these people that have wronged him in his life. Set free all of you abusers. It feels really mature. It feels really forgiving, but it also, again, feels like breaking this cycle of trauma, abuse. Beth Gibbons of Portishead has a great voice. The chorus is great. It's heartbreaking, though. I wish I was anybody but myself. I don't know why. Those lyrics those lyrics hit really hard for me for some reason. They're not even like the most profound thing ever. I think they're just super blunt and straightforward, and that's what makes them super impactful. I think it's amazing. It's Kendrick at probably his best lyrically on this album, between this and Auntie Diaries. I think it's really good. I think it's gonna get a 10. Musically, I love it. Lyrically, I love it. Mirror is the last track. I liked this track on first listen. I do still like it now. It has shrunk on me a little bit, but I think the instrumental is still pretty engaging. It's got some Tyler vibes. It's got some Kanye vibes. Feels like something that could be on Graduation, definitely. It's catchy. It feels like a good conclusion to this album of him saying, I choose me. I don't know. It feels like that's a really good way to wrap up this album, because he's gone through a lot in this album, talking about all these different struggles and stuff. And then him just saying, I choose me, I feel like it's him finally focusing on himself. And it also kind of feels like maybe him stepping away from the music industry. I mean, this is Kendrick's last album with TDE. Who knows if it's going to be his last album in general, but I hate to say it, but it kind of does feel that way, because he even says, run away from the culture to follow my heart. Maybe it's time to break it off. So it feels like Kendrick is saying maybe he's stepping away from the music industry. But again, this track feels super freeing. It feels like Kendrick prioritizing himself and his own needs before prioritizing his fans and the people that are demanding music from him and stuff like that. So yeah, there is some vocal parts to it that I'm not the biggest fan of, that just aren't super entertaining, but other than that, I think it's really good. I'm feeling like a solid 9. A solid 9 on this one. I think it really wraps up the album really well. And there you go. That is the rating for every single track on this album. Average comes out to 8.5. Alright, so I made one change to the scoring here. I don't know why I put Rich Interlude as an 8.5. Changed it to a 7. That felt like way too high for that track. Disc 1 ended up being 8.3. Disc 2, 8.5. Final score, 8.4. That feels about right for me. So a little bit lower, but still a lot higher than I had it on my first listen. I think in general, I just didn't really know what to expect coming into this album, so I think when I heard these newer sounds and these different directions that he was going in, I kind of just immediately like wrote it off. When I come back to it, it's grown on me so much. I think the writing, as I listen to it more and kind of pick up on more things, I appreciate it even more. I think the way he transitions between tracks, I didn't really like it at first because I felt like there was kind of a lack of transitions. But as I think about it more, the way he uses the stepping as kind of a transition tool, as well as the kind of theatrical vocals and stuff, and the skits and the voiceovers and stuff like that, I think it's actually really done in a really interesting way. Like I said, it kind of reminds me of the way Little Sims did it on her recent album. And I think the sound in general, I remember when I first heard this off my first listen, I thought the sound was kind of inconsistent. That is still kind of a slight critique of mine, but it's not as bad as I thought it was when I first heard it. I think there is kind of somewhat of a through line throughout these tracks, even though you do have more piano-based, more experimental, more old school feeling tracks, and then you have some more new school feelings with the heavy 808s. And then you even have tracks like Kanye influenced, of course. It does feel musically diverse, which keeps it interesting, but it doesn't feel nearly as musically inconsistent as I thought it was on a first listen. And another really impressive part of this album is that it's 18 songs, it's an hour and 13 minutes. And when I listened to this for the first time, I didn't get bored. And even when I listened to it a second time and a third time all the way through, I didn't get bored, which really says a lot in my opinion. And again, I think it comes down to the crazy amount of musical switch-ups. Like, this album just feels like it's constantly changing and exploring new ideas, which keeps it really fresh. I wouldn't say this is Kendrick's best written album. I think that would still probably go to Pimp a Butterfly, but the writing has grown on me as well. When I heard those loud choruses and those kind of weird vocals, I immediately thought, like, my mind just kind of wrote off what he was actually saying. There is lyrical depth to it that I didn't really realize at first, like I said, with those loud kind of choruses. It's very different. It's probably Kendrick's most different album, but I think it's still pretty solid. I think it's still pretty executed pretty well. It still feels pretty inventive in a lot of parts, even though some of the sounds he's going for are a little bit more mainstream. You do have tracks like United in Grief and Worldwide Steppers where the beats are just really unique. And I think the minimal kind of musical parts are pretty interesting as well. Sometimes they do feel a little bit boring, but the parts where it's just like a piano or just some strings, stuff where it's really minimal, I feel like is pretty inventive, and it does kind of put the focus on his lyrics quite a bit. So yeah, overall, this album has grown on me quite a bit. I give it an 8.5 right now. That feels about right. Who knows, it could grow on me even more as I listen to it more. Honestly, I think it's better than Damn. I think musically, I think it's a little bit more interesting. There's a little bit more variety, and yeah, I think it's a little bit better. I wouldn't say it's as good as Good Kid, Mad City. I wouldn't say it's as good as To Pimp a Butterfly, but it's probably over Damn for me right now. Again, Damn was really personal, but this feels really even more personal in my opinion. I do think the more mainstream kind of pop, kind of catchy tracks on here go over better than they did on Damn as well, so that's another reason that it kind of is better than Damn. This is definitely probably his most divisive album too, because the sound is pretty unique, and I think it threw a lot of people for a loop, but again, that doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. I just kind of had to get adjusted to it and kind of appreciate this album for what it is, because it's not a TPAB, it's not a Good Kid, it's its own thing, and it does its own things in a good way. Like, it doesn't have to be like those. It doesn't have to be like those albums to be good. It feels really unique to me. So, yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. Kendrick Lamar. I just realized that I did not have the lyrics up for that entire video. But hopefully you guys, if you're listening, I mean, I'm assuming you're listening. Why would you not be watching this without the sound? I don't know. Hopefully you guys can kind of put two and two together to what I'm talking about lyrically. Thank you guys for watching. I don't know if I might do this with more albums in the future, kind of like an additional thoughts, updated thoughts, because first reactions are so different compared to how you usually feel about the album after a while. So yeah, that's gonna do it for this video. Kendrick Lamar, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. It's grown on me. Very, very unique album for Kendrick Lamar. All right, peace out.